well aware why she was selected to be inducted in the Maine Women's Hall of Fame this year. And would Katherine Ogilvie Musgrave please come forward to receive your certificate?
Almost coming up. I'm so excited.
I'll just. Okay,
Thank you, but no.
I will just read what the certificate says. The Maine Federation of Business and Professional Women, the BPW Maine Futurama Foundation, and the University of Maine at Augusta present the 22nd Annual Maine Women's Hall of Fame Award to Katherine Ogilvie Musgrave, DSC, nominated by Karen W. Baldacci, former First Lady, and Susan J. Hunter, Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost, University of Maine. Presented March 19, 2011 at University of Maine at Augusta, signed by Allison Handley, University of Maine at Augusta President, Judith L. Bragg, BPW Maine Co-President, and Marie E.Z. Saucier, BPW Maine Futurama Foundation President.
Thank you.
Thank you. We thank you for all that you have been doing.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
We would like to welcome you and give you this chance to have your own chance to say something for us.
Oh, Betty Jane, what else can I say but thank you? There's so many people I need to thank, and certainly in this committee that has planned this wonderful affair, and all of my moderator and presenters, and all of you who've come today and who've helped me get where I am. I thank you more than I can say. I don't know where I would start, but I do want to include the University of Maine and all of my former students. There are former students here today from other states that just thrill me to death, and the ones from Maine also who are carrying on our work so much. When I go to the state meetings and see what these young people are doing that I wanted to do and never did get done, it's a wonderful feeling because they're accomplishing things in nutrition that you people are going to see in the next 50 years that I think will make a big difference, and that's such a good feeling, I'll tell you. Another reason that I'm very happy to be included in this group is because in my lifetime, I've seen so many changes in the lives of women, whether it was in the home, in professions, in academia, wherever women were working. I've seen changes. I can remember my timid little grandmothers going to my grandfathers that year after women's suffrage was passed, and they were asking how they should vote. Well, my mother certainly didn't ask Daddy how to vote. By that time, women had moved farther enough along that she had very strong convictions. And I'm very thankful for Mother's convictions because she very much believed in all the things that you and I are working for: social justice, freedom from war, a fair chance for everybody, good health, and good education. And I think it's that kind of convictions that I'd like for us to continue for Mother and for all of the world. In fact, Mother taught me very early that it was all right that she had someone in her household to help her, because she said on our farm, where we thought we were going to lose it during the Depression because of no money, but Mother still had someone to work, a woman to work for. And she explained that if she had a decent living, she owed another woman a chance to make a decent living. And I think that axiom of Mother's has certainly made life easier for me because I've been able to teach and do my dietetic practice because I've had wonderful women to help me in my house. And I think we all have that obligation to all women. During my formative years, Eleanor Roosevelt was my heroine because she stood for social justice. She did a lot of things to promote the welfare of women and children. And she was able to hold a role that no predecessor had held in the White House. So I think she was one of the most innovative women that I can think of, except I'm very grateful to my women professors who led me into dietetics. And that has been a wonderful field. It is a woman's field. We are still 97% of the dietetic profession. And certainly I think we've made a choice. Do you know that now, although the first meeting of the American Dietetic Association was in 1917, this past year in Boston, where more than 60,000 dietitians were represented by 10 or 11,000, we have become a larger association, and we are very interested in the health of the American public. It was not really until the first decade of the last century that we even had a professor of nutrition, human nutrition, in any academic setting in the United States. So you see, we are a very young profession. And I'd like to sort of take you through our timeline. I'll try to do it briefly because you've heard so much up here that I know you want to move around a little. So I'm going to just take you by the decade from the time of the last century. In 1910, we had the first woman professor in nutrition. She did her work because she had worked with a man food scientist, and Dr. Henry Sherman and Dr. Mary Swartz Rose in the second decade, then, after she had been appointed in the first decade, wrote many of the textbooks and the manuals that were used in the beginning of human nutrition studies in academia in this country. Then in the third and fourth decades of the last century, when I was just beginning to learn about nutrition, as Dr. Hunter has pointed out to you, our population was malnourished. They had not had enough food during the Depression. And so all the diets that I learned to write when I first became a dietitian were high-calorie, high-vitamin diets. I don't write many high-calorie diets today, but that was the thing. Well, of course, immediately the pharmaceutical companies latched on to the fact that those few vitamins we knew about, we only knew about 4 or 5 vitamins, and we didn't know much about them, but they did make a big difference in the people who took them. So immediately the pharmaceutical companies sent vitamin supplements to every physician in the United States. And the public got the opinion that if you took a vitamin, it would cure anything and everything. And so look now at the number of supplements that are on the market because of that decade when vitamins became so popular because they cured those diseases. Then in the 5th century, I don't know, wait a minute, I'm not, yes, I am up to the 50s, I guess. The 30s and the 40s were when we were really working on high-calorie, high-vitamin diets. It was also in the 40s that we had the first passage of the School Lunch Act to feed the nation's hungry children. And it was the first time we'd ever had any recommendations in solid values for human beings. Now, they had already had RDAs for animals because animals cost money. And they made money for people. Other people, human nutrition didn't bring in any money. And so we didn't get the recommendations for what we should be feeding people in numerical terms until 1943 when our first recommendations came out. And they've been revised every 10 years since then. The 50s brought on protein as the hot nutrient because there was a lot of experimentation going on. Even at the University of Maine at Orono, some of the first work on amino acids was done, and we were beginning to realize the importance of protein for growth and for maintenance of tissue. Then the 60s brought Linus Pauling, who was a very wise chemist, but he didn't know much nutrition. And so he stated that vitamin C would cure the common cold. Well, by now you've all learned that vitamin C doesn't really make that much difference in the common cold, but because some noted person said so, again, the pharmaceutical companies started selling huge doses of vitamin C, and the public swallowed all of it and liked it. Another man who came forward at that time was Feingold, who said that sugar caused hyperactivity. And there's some people who still believe that you're hyperactive if you get too much sugar. Well, there's nothing to that theory either, but it took over for a while. And then again, we got up to the 70s. And then McGovern had held some hearings in Washington to alert these congressional representatives that we really were beginning again to have too much heart disease. You remember when the real flack came out about fat? We started trying to decrease the amount of fat people ate, but we never intended for the industry to take over and sell everything that was low fat. We didn't intend for people to go totally without fat, and some people would have made you believe that because of the advertising. So I would say that fat was the nutrient of the 70s, but most of the nutrients have just held about 1 decade, because pretty soon Atkins came along and he pushed for high-fat, low-carbohydrate, which we'd been teaching people to use instead of fat. So you can see that nutritionists have been a mess. We haven't done enough studying, and I'm afraid I'm one of them, I have to admit. But then we get to the 80s, and now attention has been given to the influence of the fatty acids, and we spend a great deal of time on cholesterol and the serums, lipids, and how much high cholesterol damage will do. Then came the increased incidence of blood pressure, and sodium became the hot nutrient. Everybody was watching low-salt diets, and we heard a lot about how it does still contribute to strokes. But then we were able to measure bone density, and calcium became the hot nutrient. We had all these advertisements about how much calcium we need. Then in the 90s, it was the antioxidants. And we heard so much about how we all need to buy the pills with antioxidants in them. The truth is you can get all the antioxidants you need if you eat whole grains, enough fruits and vegetables, and some nuts and seeds. And nobody needs to buy a special pill for an antioxidant that I know of. Those phytochemicals are important, and we are learning more about them. And thank goodness for every decade that has made us learn something else. The last 2 decades, as was referred to, was the obesity hot business. And my soul, look at the number of books that publishers have put into our bookstores. And if you really look at those shelves and see how many bookstores, and then you ride through any town or city and see the number of cars in the parking lots of those restaurants and fast food establishments, you wonder who in the world's using those recipe books, because everybody's eating out. The last hot nutrient, and that's the one you're hearing about right now, and I hope I've gone over the decades sequentially. The last one now is vitamin D, and we're all wondering, do we need to take vitamin D supplement? How much do we need? When do we get it? And how do we get it? So it's really fun to look at the timeline of what has gone on and look to see what we've learned in nutrition. I guess I could only pin it down to 2 things that I think I would say I might have learned. And that is that nutrition really is an evolving science. As we have more sophisticated equipment and learn more, we still have a lot to learn because there's so much we don't know. But I think each decade you're going to see, and I wish I could live long enough to see what happens to my children and grandchildren, because I think things are going to be wonderful for them. But I wonder which are going to be the hot nutrients. I'm just interested in seeing. The second thing is, as we try to dispel the myths and the misinformation that's given out, we have to help the public understand that when scientists report on one of their research projects in a meeting, and a reporter goes to that meeting and listens to the reprint and reads reprint and listens to the talk, he goes back to his source and publishes whatever that scientist found. Some of the public tend to believe that that's the law of food. That's the food they need to be eating. That scientist was just looking for one part of the puzzle. He wasn't beginning to answer the question about what causes heart trouble. He was just looking at one part of the fat molecule and reporting on it. So I see my former students and my wonderful people who are here today as trying to dispel the myth and the misinformation that is out about food. Because through all these decades that I've lived, the only thing that I can say for sure to my students at the end of a semester is just what I think Dr. Hunter reiterated it very well. If we eat what we think gives us adequate nutrients and we keep them in balance with 3 meals a day, hopefully sitting at the table with our families, at least one of those meals, and we get enough physical activity, I think we could cut the costs of health care, Doctor, so more than most any way we could do it, if we could just stay healthy and eat right. And then you people wouldn't have to work so hard down in Washington. We're very grateful to you for all the work you're doing, and I'm really honored to be in the same day with you. But I do hope you'll all enjoy good food. Don't make it You master the food. There's plenty of food out there. If you don't like something, just go ahead and eat something else that has the same nutrient in it, and don't bother. Have fun with food, and I do thank you for being here today.
Yes, it's fine. Oh, okay. No, they're coming up now. Thank you very much for sharing with us your thoughts today, and I'm sure we all learned a lot and understand why you are such a great professor in diet and nutrition at the university. Just seeing you up here just makes us all feel great, and I'm sure your students enjoyed seeing and hearing you again. So thanks again. And now we will be honoring our second inductee today, the Honorable Susan M. Collins, Senator, and she was nominated by Mary G. Canning of Dexter, Darlene Grass and Shelley O'Rourke of Caribou Business and Professional Women, and Jerry L. Martin of Fort Kent Business and Professional Women. And we would like to have the induction ceremony for Senator Susan Collins begin now, so would all of you please come up to the stage. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Mary Canning, but who is Mary Canning? Answer, Patty Burgoyne's mother. The Maine Women's Hall of Fame was begun when Patty was BPW state president 22 years ago, with one of the first inductees being Senator Margaret Chase Smith. 2 years ago, after Patty's untimely death, her sister and I and her friends nominated Patty. When I looked at the wall of pictures, my first question was, where is Senator Susan Collins? So, starting a year ago now, I researched her many accomplishments. During this journey, I have developed a great respect for this woman of character. I have been asked to read the cover letter that goes with the nomination book. The book would take too long. It's 250 pages. Here is the cover letter. Senator Susan M. Collins. The first word that comes to mind regarding Senator Susan M. Collins is integrity, and perhaps next is hardworking. She received an award in 2007 as the hardest working senator, one of over 200 awards that she has received. Plus, she has never missed a vote, which you heard before today, all right? Susan Collins is truly living a life of public service. Susan grew up in Caribou, Maine, with parents who set an example of public service by each serving terms as mayor of that city. As a junior in high school, Susan attended Maine Dirigo Girls State, and as a senior was selected to go to Washington, D.C., where she was inspired to go into public service. For 23 years, Susan has returned to Dirigo Girls State to give the keynote speech on opening day. She has indeed become an inspirational example to girls in Maine as one of the state's most powerful women. In October 2005, Collins served as a member of the International Women's Forum on a panel to address the global issue of women's health. Later, she introduced legislation to extend payments for home health care in rural areas like Maine. She also founded and co-chairs the Senate Diabetes Caucus and is particularly concerned about gestational diabetes, which can have terrible consequences for both mother and child. Collins is co-sponsor of Johanna's Law, which will improve early detection of gynecologic cancer, and is a strong supporter of the STOP program, which provides grants to help in cases of domestic violence. In July of 2006, Collins received the Woman Who Makes a Difference Award from the Yale Women's Campaign School. Her acceptance speech detailed obstacles she had to overcome to succeed as a woman in the political arena. In October of 2006, Susan Collins wrote at the foreword to the Women's Encyclopedia and recounted the history of women's rights dating back to 1853 at the Women's Rights Convention in Cleveland. Collins cited the words of Sojourner Truth, who stated, "We shall have our rights, see if we don't." In October of 2007, Senator Collins received the Mother Teresa Lifetime Achievement Award at the National Association for Home Care and Hospice in Denver, Colorado. In June of 2008, in her weekly newspaper column, Senator Collins wrote about care for the women who serve our nation, and as a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, she introduced the bill Women Veterans Health Care Improvement Act of 2008. A year later, Collins wrote a column called Remembering and Honoring the Women Air Force Service Pilots, called WASPs. She followed up by co-sponsoring legislation to award the WASPs the Congressional Gold Medal. In April of 2010, Senator Collins recognized the Maine Women's Policy Center and Wage Project for celebrating Maine's Equal Pay Day. She had previously worked for passage of the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, and on January 29, 2009, was invited by President Obama to attend the signing ceremony for the bill, the first of his presidency. In February 2010, Collins titled one of her weekly columns, Protecting a Woman's Heart, noting that the heart disease death rate in young women had increased. She joined Senate colleagues to sponsor the Heart for Women Act. In March, Senator Byron Dorgan joined Senator Collins in introducing legislation to renew the Special Diabetes Program, which especially helps children diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and their mothers, including many here in Maine. In April of 2010, Senator Collins' bill to create a National Women's History Museum advanced to the full Senate. It is estimated that such a museum would draw 1.5 million visitors to the nation's capital each year. Senator Collins received the 2009 Congressional Award from the AARP Maine State President for her legislative leadership to protect seniors from preventable readmissions. Many seniors who receive this benefit are women. In June of 2010, the Maine chapter of the American College of Nurse Midwives honored Susan Collins for their Public Service Award. In addition to these activities, specifically for women, Senator Collins works tirelessly on her committee assignments, Homeland Security and Government Affairs, Appropriations, Armed Services, and the Special Committee on Aging. Her efforts have benefited all of us in Maine and across America. And she does it all with a smile and a gracious attitude. Our next speaker will read the cover letter from their nomination. Susan Collins had 3 separate nominations, one from me and one from Caribou BPW and one from Fort Kent BPW. Shelley O'Rourke is the current president of Caribou BPW, and she will read her cover letter.
Good afternoon. I'm truly honored to be here today to represent the Caribou Business and Professional Women's Club in honoring our great Senator Susan Collins. How often can you find a woman filled with commitment, open-mindedness, loyalty, leadership, integrity, nurturing, and sagaciousness all rolled into one? Our great state of Maine is fortunate to have such a woman as one of our renowned United States Senators, Susan Collins. From her beginning in the small northern Maine town of Caribou to her current position as one of the most influential women in the United States Senate, she has proven herself over and over again as an advocate for women, both in her home state of Maine as well as across our great nation. Senator Collins' commitment to the cause, Senator Collins' commitment to the cause of women has been shown throughout her public service career. She worked diligently to secure $20 billion nationwide, $116 million for the state of Maine to assist states in dealing with their budget shortfalls. Without this funding, Maine would have seen astronomical cuts in vital programs such as Medicaid. Additionally, she worked tirelessly on a grant of $4.6 million statewide to promote a prevention program for violence against women. The funding was utilized to help build organizations dedicated to ensuring battered women were supported and their abusers held accountable. Senator Collins has been a champion of the Heart Disease Education, Analysis, Research, and Treatment, HEART, an organization dedicated to improving the prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of heart disease in women. A part of HEART is the Wise Woman, Well-Integrated Screening for Women Across the Nation program. This program provides both heart disease and stroke prevention screening, such as tests for high blood pressure and high cholesterol, to low-income and uninsured women in 14 states. Ms. Collins has been an integral part in researching wind turbines for coastal Maine, an effort that will generate more than 15,000 green jobs for both men and women. At the same time, will provide the state of Maine with more than $20 billion in investment opportunities. The lucrative career of nursing is one near and dear to Senator Collins' heart. One of her priorities in the Senate has been to increase the nurse workforce program. She has recently been recognized by the University of Maine at Fort Kent for her dedicated support of the nursing profession. Additionally, she was offered with a Public Service Award on behalf of the American College of Nurse Midwives for her efforts to address the health care needs of women and for her leadership on legislation to provide equitable reimbursement to certified nurse midwives. Senator Collins' support of the equal pay for women was evidenced by her recognition at the Maine Women's Policy Center and the wage women are getting even earlier this year. Additionally, she worked and saw through to fruition the passage of the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, an act that will provide women across the nation with fair and equitable pay. A National Women's History Museum is one of Senator Collins' pieces of legislation. The museum would showcase women throughout history, including famous women from Maine such as Margaret Chase Smith and Harriet B. Stowe. The legislation includes a lucrative location in the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Both our state and our country need more women like Susan Collins, a true spokesperson for women who will work tediously at that crack in the glass ceiling until it is shattered. Thank you, Susan.
Our next speaker is a state past president of BPW from Fort Kent, and that was the third nomination. And she'll read their cover letter. Jerry, I didn't say her name. Jerry Martin.
Thank you. And I am also very honored to be here. I've been waiting for this day for a long time, Senator Collins. And I'd also like to congratulate Professor Musgrave. I'll kind of condense mine since it has a little bit of each of the prior two. Let's just get going third. The Maine Women's Hall of Fame is a great resource for young women to research women who have made a difference in our lives. Senator Collins stated on many different occasions that Senator Margaret Chase Smith was her role model in public service. And for those of you who missed it last night, Mrs. Smith Goes to Washington here. It was a great program about Margaret Chase Smith. I believe both senators have made a deep impact on our lives of young women and inspire us still. women find strength and guidance through the women of today and also through the women of the past. Senator Collins is the author of the legislation to establish the National Women's History Museum in Washington, D.C., a project that BPW USA has undertaken for years. It is very exciting to think that the contributions of our state of Maine will make to the museum. Just take a look at the women who have been selected and inducted into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame thus far. In reference to the museum, Senator Collins stated, "The only political statement we are making is to correct omissions in history." That's a great statement. In recognition of her efforts in home health care and hospice, she was named Legislator of the Year in 1999 by Visiting Home Nurses Association of America and as a home care hero by the National Association for Home Care and Hospice in 2000, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 2007. In addition, in 2001, she received the Claude Pepper Award for the National Association for Home Care and Hospice, and in 2007, the Mother Teresa Award from that same organization for her efforts to fight for the rights of the aged, infirm, and disabled. More than 2 million women have served in the U.S. Armed Forces, and there are currently 1.8 million women veterans. As part of an ongoing commitment of Business and Professional Women's Futurama or Foundation to support women veterans, BPW Foundation developed programs to help our sheroes and their families as they transition into civilian professional life. Women Joining Forces Closing Rank, Opening Doors provides programming and resources to support women veterans and their families as they return to their civilian lives. Women Joining Forces also include the Women Veterans in Transition Research Project to examine the needs and experiences of women veterans as they enter the civilian workforce. The Senate passed legislation that Senator Collins introduced that will allow veteran organizations to apply for and receive surplus property donations from the federal government. Senator Susan Collins, a member of the State Appropriation and Armed Services Committee through the Veterans Affairs Appropriations Spending Bill, secured funding including $50 million for a new rural clinic initiative to provide for additional community-based outreach clinics in rural and highly rural areas such as Maine. Senator Collins is a well-deserving individual for this award, but I would also like for everybody to know that there's a personal side to Senator Collins. BPW USA and all of the states would go down in February on lobby days, and we would each meet with our senators and our representatives, and Senator Collins was always there for us, whether she could just spend a few minutes. And I remember one time the lady kept saying, "Senator Collins, you gotta go. One more minute. And then when the anthrax scare came, I was already in Washington, D.C. Her office did not know that. They left a message at my home saying, "I'm sorry, the offices are all closed. We're going to have to cancel your meetings." We didn't get the message. We were at her office at our slotted time, and they said, "Oh, no, she's not here." And we're like, "Oh, no, she has to be here." She informed her people to bring us down in that little train that Susan Hunter was talking about. So we went under these little buildings. It was so exciting. And we told the national congregation there for BPW USA all about it, and we were pretty proud of our senator for taking the time, even during that event that was happening. She took her time. We went to this little office. She's got a beautiful office now. We went to her little office, and she met with us, and she heard what we had to say, and she always supports a lot of what BPW USA is supporting, like the Johanna's Law, Lilly Ledbetter, etc. And we appreciate Senator Collins, and we appreciate the fact that she is there in Washington for us, and she listens. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
We had hoped that former Secretary of Defense William Cohen could be here, and he was unable to come, but he sent a video, so we will now see the video.
I'm sorry I can't be with you in person this afternoon, but I wanted to say a few words on behalf of Senator Susan Collins, who you're honoring with admission into Maine's Women's Hall of Fame. Both of us are probably somewhat alarmed to hear this number, but I met Susan nearly 40 years ago. I think she was only 5. But when I was first starting my first race for the United States Congress, and she volunteered on my campaign. Don and Pat Collins, Susan's parents, they were very active supporters of mine in Aroostook County, and through them, I got to know Susan. Now, even at that young age, Susan stood apart from the crowd, as she does now. She was serious, thoughtful, diligent, and very, very smart. When she wrote me a couple of years later about interning in my office during her senior year in college, I didn't waste any time. I said yes. And that internship in 1974 led to a full-time position the next year when she graduated from college. And then she went on to work for me for 12 years before returning to Maine back in 1987. And during those 12 years, she became a close, trusted advisor whose judgment I truly relied upon regularly. Susan was living in Bangor in January 1996 when I made a surprise announcement that I was not going to seek a 4th term. It was about an hour or so before the press conference I called her to say she might want to come down to City Hall in Bangor to hear some interesting news. Well, we all know the rest of the story. Susan won a hard-fought race that year to win the U.S. Senate seat, and she's now in her 3rd term, serving Maine with great distinction. Susan also learned a lot about public service from 2 previous honorees. The first was Senator Margaret Chase Smith. Susan was chosen by Caribou High School to participate in the U.S. Senate Youth Program, which included a trip to Washington, D.C., and a meeting with Senator Smith. And I know it was a conversation which greatly influenced Susan. The other major influence on Susan's diligent approach to public service is her mother, Pat, who joined the Hall of Fame in 2005. Pat's service as mayor of Caribou with the University of Maine as a trustee, and also numerous other undertakings, has shown the same dedication that Susan has displayed in her own political career. I've always felt a special sense of pride that Susan won the Senate seat that I had been privileged to hold for 18 years, and which had been held before by Senator Margaret Chase Smith for 24 years. Susan has been a valued friend, as I've said, and a colleague for these past 40 years, and I'm deeply proud of her induction into this impressive group of leading Maine women. Susan, congratulations, and thank you very much.
Now we have a young lady who was at Dirigo Girls State in 2006 when she was a junior in high school and has just graduated last year from Bowdoin College, who will read you her letter that she wrote for Susan Collins. Sabrina Cody. It's on your program. There you go.
Thank you, Mrs. Canning. It's very nice to be here at this event that I know is very special to you. And it's wonderful to be here on behalf of young women from Maine to help recognize Senator Susan Collins on this fantastic honor. As a United States Senator representing Maine for over a decade, Senator Collins has, without doubt, made a significant impact in the state on a number of levels. Of highest importance is the work that she has done to improve the lives of women in Maine, as well as the lasting value that such work will have for future generations of Maine women. While the recognition and awards that Senator Collins has received for her work speak volumes about the positive impact that she has had on Maine, it's also important to look closely at the example that Senator Collins has set for young women all over Maine as one of her greatest and most valuable contributions to the state. In the summer of 2006, I had the great fortune of hearing Senator Collins speak for the first time while I was a delegate at Dirigo Girls State. As a rising senior in high school, I had thought very little about a career in politics, and I remember a feeling of intrigue when Senator Collins began to speak and her address touched only briefly on careers in politics and instead held a far more broadly applicable message. Through her speech, she conveyed 2 essential life lessons. The first, follow your dreams and take risks, and the second, role models exist all around you. Seek them out and learn from them. As rising seniors in high school, we had all been conditioned to seek out people whom we aspired to resemble. But what was different about the way that Senator Collins discussed role models was that she not only advised us to identify those people in our lives, but also challenged us to become role models ourselves. I remember a feeling of empowerment as a woman of such great accomplishment stood before us to say that people would soon be looking to us for something to model themselves after, looking to us for leadership, looking to us for inspiration. Her ability to express the importance of having high aspirations and the significance of women rising to leadership roles in all fields, not just in government, had a lasting impression on me as I made my way through college and pursued leadership roles in a variety of campus organizations, not fearing that this should be a job reserved for one of my male Bowdoin classmates. I am confident that I can speak for my fellow class of 2006 Girls State delegates in saying that Senator Collins' address certainly made us reconsider the possibilities in our futures. This sense of empowerment for young women, this feeling of a limitless world where hard work and a bit of risk can take one so far, is, in my opinion, one of Senator Collins' greatest and most lasting contributions to the state of Maine. While I'm certain that Senator Collins' list of accomplishments is vast and includes a great many prestigious accolades, I do sincerely believe that we should count her inspiration to young women in Maine as an achievement of highest value. Thank you, and congratulations, Senator Collins, on this wonderful piece of recognition.
And lastly, we have Representative Joyce Fitzpatrick from the legislature to read presentation of legislative sentiment for Susan Collins.
Susan, would you come up, please? Gives me great pleasure to represent the new majority in Augusta in this legislative sentiment that we've prepared for her. State of Maine, be it known to all that we, the members of the Senate and House of Representatives, join in recognizing the Honorable Susan M. Collins of Bangor upon her induction into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. As a dedicated and experienced lawmaker, Senator Collins has continually acknowledged the lasting contributions women have made in shaping our
Here honoring a second inductee today, Senator Susan Collins. And I would like to have her come forward and present to her our certificate. The Maine Federation of Business and Professional Women, the BPW Maine Futurama Foundation, and the University of Maine at Augusta present the 22nd Annual Maine Women's Hall of Fame Award to the Honorable Susan M. Collins, nominated by Mary G. Cannon of Dexter, Jerry L. Martin of Fort Kent BPW, and Darlene Grass and Shelley O'Rourke of Caribou BPW, presented March 19, 2011, at the University of Maine at Augusta, signed by Dr. Allison Handley, University of Maine at Augusta President, Judith L. Bragg, BPW Maine Co-President, and Marie Saucier, BPW Maine Futurama Foundation President. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Senator Collins, you're welcome to share some remarks at this time.
Thank you.
You know, this is going to relate to an issue that I'm going to discuss with you today. But what we've just seen is democracy in action. And aren't we lucky that we live in a country where people can speak out and express their views, whether they agree with the person who's being honored or not. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Believe me, that's not happening in Libya or a lot of other places in the world. First of all, I want to thank BPW for this honor today. I want to tell you a little story. Today is the first day that I have met Sabrina. I read her letter in support of my nomination, and I was so touched because I know each year when I make the effort to go speak to Girls State that I'm addressing the leaders of tomorrow. And we've seen one of those leaders of tomorrow today. And Sabrina, your impressive accomplishments in the classroom, on the court, and in the community means so much to me. And your letter and your being here today, she drove up from Boston, where she's working, really touched me. So thank you so much. Ever since I've learned of my election to the Maine Women's Hall of Fame earlier this year, I've reflected on the significance of this honor. And to be honored with Katherine Musgrave means so much to me. Katherine has come to meet with me many times over the years to give me a little advice, sometimes to straighten me out on something, but I have treasured our meetings. And she is truly a miracle, a force of nature. I also want to take a moment to recognize some of those who supported my nomination. Now, the full list, I'm happy to tell you, is far too long to read, but it reminds me of how lucky I am to be a Mainer and to have so many great friends. Mary, you are incredible. Mary put together a notebook that is literally this thick. She knows things that I don't remember about what I've done. And I thank you because I know we would not be here today but for you. Shelley and Jerry, Darlene, the other members of the BPW from both Fort Kent and from Caribou and all over the state. There are so many people who wrote in. My good friend Mary Adams, who also nominated me and is here today. There are so many others, and I thank you all. I'm very grateful for your being here, and I very much appreciate the video that Bill Cohen sent. That was the first time that I saw it, and he's such a great leader who is a source of inspiration to me. The list of inductees into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame, which since it was established 21 years ago, is an honor roll of Maine women whose achievements in every field of endeavor have enriched our state, improved the lives of Maine women, and inspired the generations to come. Two members of this distinguished honor roll have special places in my life, as has been mentioned. The first, of course, is my mother, Pat Collins. It was such a thrill to see her inducted into the Hall of Fame 6 years ago. Now, in case you're wondering why she is not here today, let me tell you something about my mother. Even at the age of nearly 83, she never fails to hear the call of duty. And today she is on duty in Baltimore as New England's only female delegate to the National Advisory Council of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And I think she'd forgive me for saying, but frankly, I think they need her advice even more than I do. I am delighted that my father, Don Collins, and my brother, Sam Collins, made the trip down from Caribou to be with me today. And I'm grateful that so many friends and members of my staff have also made the effort to be here as well. Mary was telling me over lunch that I have the best staff in the world, and she's right, and I feel so fortunate. The second Hall of Fame member who inspired me is, of course, the legendary Margaret Chase Smith. In 1922, at the age of just 25, she helped to found the BPW chapter in Skowhegan, and she was later elected the president of the Maine BPW. Of course, more elections and even greater accomplishments lay ahead for Margaret Chase Smith. She once told me that the support that she received from BPW members all over the state was critical to her very first election to the Congress. In fact, she told me she couldn't have won without that network of women all over the state. From the very first time that we met, when I was a high school senior, I have been inspired by her integrity, determination, and commitment to public service. Now, I'd like to devote the rest of my remarks today to the state of public discourse in this country and its implications for the effectiveness of government and, in a larger sense, for the functioning of society as a whole. We need a more civil tone in the public debate in Washington and throughout the country. Addressing the real concerns of our citizens should be the focus of each and every one of us who is privileged to serve the public. Unfortunately, achieving solutions is not the goal for everyone today. Rather, in Washington, too often the goal is to draw sharp distinctions and score political points, even if that means that the problems facing our country go unresolved. To be sure, tumult is inherent in democracy. As Thomas Jefferson once said, the boisterous sea of liberty is never without a wave. There is, however, a great difference between the waves of lively, informed debate that propel ideas forward and a tsunami of insult and false accusation that destroys everything in its path. I am uncertain of who it was who first described politics as the art of compromise, but that maxim, to which I have always subscribed, seems woefully out of fashion these days. Sitting down with those on the opposite side of an issue, figuring out what issues matter most to each side, negotiating in good faith, and attempting to reach a solution are actions often vilified by the hardliners on both sides of the aisle. I am certain that any historian of American politics would tell you that the degree of civility in Congress has ebbed and flowed over the years. At least we don't have one member caning another into unconsciousness, as happened in 1836 when Representative Preston Brooks of South Carolina flogged Senator Charles Sumner of Massachusetts on the Senate floor. But in modern times, I have rarely seen the degree of bitter divisiveness and excessive partisanship now found in Washington. The weapon of choice today is not a metal-topped cane, but poisonous words. During the last Congress, the minority party was increasingly shut out of the discussion. Even in the Senate, which used to pride itself on being the bastion of free and open debate, procedural tactics were routinely used to prevent Republican amendments and to curtail debate. And that, in turn, caused Republicans to overuse the filibuster because our only option was to stop a bill to which we could not offer amendments. We saw this unfortunate phenomenon last year during the consideration of the defense bill, which included language that would end the don't ask, don't tell policy. Now, I happen to support repealing don't ask, don't tell. My view is this: if individuals are willing to put on the uniform of their country, to be deployed to war zones like Iraq and Afghanistan, to risk their lives for the benefit of their fellow citizens, then we should be expressing our gratitude to them, not trying to exclude them from serving in the military. But I recognize that many of my colleagues did not see it the same way that I did. And they should have had the right to offer their amendments and debate the issue, even though I was going to vote against them and debate just as hard on the other side. Eventually, we introduced a standalone bill, a bipartisan bill that Joe Lieberman and I authored, and Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the repeal of it finally passed by a vote of 63 to 31. But it almost fell victim to partisan political maneuvering that had little to do with the merits. There's another factor that has coarsened the public debate in Washington, and that is the emergence of the 24/7 news cycle and of networks that cater to individuals who are on one side of the political spectrum or the other. That has hardened the political lines and made compromise much more difficult. Members of Congress who have extreme political views now have an outlet for their rants, and arguably they make for much more interesting interviews than those of us in the colorless center. Now, there's another negative development that has contributed to the decline in civility. When I was a freshman senator in 1997, I remember Senator John Chafee of Rhode Island, as fine a gentleman who as has ever served in the Senate, advising me never to campaign against those with whom I served, whether they were Democrats or Republicans. The Senate is too small a place, he counseled. Campaign for your Republican colleagues, go to states with open seats, but do not campaign against your Democratic colleagues. It will poison your relationship with them. And back then, most senators followed the Chafee rule, but that has changed. Now many senators enthusiastically campaign against their colleagues in their home states. And last year's elections show just how far the destruction of collegiality has progressed, with some members campaigning against incumbent senators in their own caucus by endorsing their primary opponents. Now, why does this matter? The fact is that these personal attacks in campaigns have detrimental effects that last long after Election Day. And the seemingly constant campaign cycle, aided and abetted by cable and radio shows whose ratings may depend on reaching small but highly partisan members of the electorate, coarsens the debate. Of course, I do not mean to suggest that civility requires us to accept the unacceptable. Good manners, graciousness, and avoiding undue offense must not prevent the telling of unpleasant truths. If they do, then we're left with nothing more than polite but meaningless discourse, devoid of passion and principle. When Senator Margaret Chase Smith, 60 years ago, went to the Senate floor to deliver her famous Declaration of Conscience, she did so not to demonize Wisconsin Senator Joseph McCarthy, but to denounce his actions. She certainly gave him great offense, but she spoke the truth about his tactics of ruining reputations, crushing free speech, and smearing his opponents. Telling the truth about Senator McCarthy's conduct in strong, straightforward, tough language was far more important than worrying about offending him. In contrast, consider the House member from my own party who interrupted President Obama's speech to a joint session of Congress in 2009 by yelling out, "You lie!" Or the House Democratic member whose contribution to the health care debate consisted of asserting that Republicans had a two-word plan: die quickly. These are decidedly uncivil acts, designed not to reveal truth, not to argue the merits of a position, but rather simply to cause offense. So where does this leave us? Students of American culture might ask whether incivility is strictly a Washington phenomenon or a reflection of changes in society at large. The question reminds me of the response that Senator Lowell Weicker once gave to an unhappy constituent who denounced him and his colleagues as a bunch of liars, thieves, and womanizers. Senator Weicker calmly replied, "Well, it is, after all, a representative form of government." I will not try to play sociologist and weigh in on this issue, except to note that there are indications that as a people, we are becoming less civil. Just witness the growing incidence of bullying in schools, the attack journalism on cable television, the use of the internet to smear people anonymously, and the popular appeal of so-called reality TV shows in which people are fired or voted off islands. I am more confident in asserting that even if Washington leads the nation in incivility, it is not likely to change until those outside Washington demand it. What gets rewarded gets done, and for those of us in Congress, re-election is the ultimate reward. Voting out of office or not electing in the first place those who put partisanship over progress, conflict over compromise, would create a very different legislative climate, one in which the objective is to solve problems, not just to try to score points. It may not be easy to feel passionate about civility and compromise, but it is easy to feel passionate about a vibrant, just, and prosperous America. To achieve that, however, we need to be passionate about electing members of Congress who not only work hard, but work together. A return to civility and a spirit of compromise must be driven by the voters, and it is not inevitable. To keep around those of us who bridge the partisan divide will require the energetic support of community leaders throughout America, including those in this room who want a less confrontational, more effective government in Washington. Helping ourselves out of this problem is going to take what it's always taken: hard work on the part of those who are committed to the future of our great country. A commitment to the future is what unifies the Federation of Business and Professional Women across this country. And it is the common thread that binds together the lives of those commemorated in the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. Thank you again for this very great honor, and thank you for your friendship. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Collins. At this point, we would like to have a representative from the United States Postal Service, Regina Bugby, Marketing Manager for the U.S. Postal Service. Please come forward. She has a presentation that, as you will all see, fits in with what we've been talking about today.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to congratulate Senator Susan Collins and Professor Musgrave and your accomplishments into this elite group today. You certainly are well-deserving and have done a lot in your lives, which was spoken about today. On behalf of the Postal Service, we thought it was rather fitting today to present both of you with the stamped, engraved, framed artwork of Margaret Chase Smith, the stamp that was unveiled in 2007. So, Susan?
Thank you.
That's beautiful. And I also have yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think it is an honor for inductees now who are receiving something to get something of someone who is in the Maine Women's Hall of Fame, who is recognized nationally, and this is something that they can have to remember the event by, too. So congratulations to both of you, Senator Collins, and to you, Katherine Musgrave, for being our new honorees and inductees in the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. We all appreciate all the great work that you have done for women, for girls, for everyone in Maine, and we're glad to have had this opportunity to share this with you. And we would like to thank all of those who did the presentations today, and for everyone who joined us this afternoon. And we appreciate any support that was given in honor or in memory of someone that's listed in the program booklet. All this is used as fundraising for our $1,200 scholarships. We honor the people like the two that we have today for what they have contributed to Maine and to themselves and to everyone. And we want to honor the young ladies who are coming up through school by giving them scholarships for attending college, and there can be more information if anyone wants to check on me about being able to apply for one. And special appreciation today to everyone involved, the sponsoring organizations, the UMA Facilities Department, the sponsors of our inductees, and everyone who participated in the induction ceremony this afternoon, the judges, the special committee for the Hall of Fame, including the Silver Tea, which I hope all of you enjoyed this afternoon. This event would not be possible without the hard work of many, many individuals. This special ceremony is